Okay, so today we're going to walk through an ancient poem, Psalm 11, but we're not going to treat it like a history lesson. We're going to treat it like a movie script. It's this super short but incredibly intense story about what happens when your world starts to crumble and every single voice you hear is screaming at you to run. And really, the entire story hangs on this one question. When the ground beneath your feet starts to shake, what do you do? This psalm shows us two completely different responses to that exact question. So, our story kicks off with someone in a serious crisis. And just like in any good movie, the first thing they run into is this chorus of voices. And these voices, they all sound so logical, so persuasive, but they're all driven by one thing: fear. Verse 1 just drops us right into the middle of the conflict. The speaker starts by saying, "My trust is in the Lord," but immediately they're hit with skepticism. The people around them are basically saying, "Are you serious? Look around you. The only sane thing to do is get out of here. Flee, like a bird escaping a hunter's trap." This creates such a powerful picture in your head. Just imagine it. You're standing your ground, totally resolved. But all around you are these shadowy figures, and their voices are just urgent whispers in your ear. Leave. Run for the mountains. Save yourself. It's this massive clash between your conviction and that raw, primal urge to just panic. But you see, this isn't just some vague anxiety. The advice to run is coming from a very real, very personal threat that's unfolding in the shadows. Verse 2 gives us the why behind all the panic. The voices are pointing to a hidden danger, a literal ambush being set up. This isn't a fair fight. It's a secret attack, and it's aimed at people who are vulnerable because they're trying to do the right thing. To really feel this, picture it from a first-person point of view. You're hiding behind a stone pillar, peering out into the darkness. And in that darkness, you catch the glint of steel as an archer silently notches an arrow. You can almost feel the tension in that bowstring. That threat is aimed right at you. And here's the thing. This personal threat is really just a symptom of a much bigger problem. The crisis is escalating, and it feels like the very fabric of society is starting to unravel. Verse 3 brings the fear to its absolute peak. Now, the foundations here aren't just buildings. They're the pillars of society: justice, order, truth. And the question it asks is one of total despair. If everything we've built our world on is corrupt and broken, what can a good person possibly do? Imagine the solid marble floor of a great hall of justice suddenly cracking open right under your feet. The massive pillars that hold up the roof, the ones that represent law and order, they begin to groan and lean and then just crumble into dust. Everything you thought was permanent and strong is just dissolving into chaos. And that question just hangs there, doesn't it? Faced with a total collapse, what can anyone do? The argument for fear seems unbeatable. From this point of view, there is no answer. But right now, the perspective of our story is about to change, dramatically. We're shifting our focus from the chaos on the ground to a much higher vantage point. This is the pivot on which the entire psalm turns. Verse 4 is the answer to the despair of verse 3. See, the speaker doesn't try to patch up the crumbling foundations. Instead, they shift their gaze entirely. They realize the real seat of power isn't on some fragile earthly throne. It's in heaven. And from that vantage point, everything is seen, everything is being assessed. So imagine that classic cinematic shot. The camera pans up from the dust and rubble of the collapsing courthouse on Earth. It pushes up through the dark storm clouds and then breaks out into this silent, serene, infinite space. And there, in the center of it all, is a throne that just radiates pure light, absolute calm, and unshakable power. The chaos below seems pretty small and temporary from up here. From this higher perspective, the chaos on the ground starts to make a weird kind of sense. What seemed random is now revealed to be a pattern of cause and effect. Justice isn't gone. It's just being handled by a higher court. Verse 5 explains the purpose of this divine observation. The righteous are tested, and not to break them, but to refine them, kind of like how a goldsmith purifies gold in a fire. But for those who embrace violence, well, the response is completely different. A clear line is drawn in the sand. So we see two distinct paths with two very different outcomes. On one side, you have a refining fire. On the other, a fundamental opposition from the ultimate source of power. Verse 6 lays out the inevitable consequences of choosing that path of violence. It's not a possibility, it's presented as a certainty. Judgment is described as a storm of fire and sulfur, the natural outcome of their actions. The view from the throne continues. Imagine looking down and seeing a dark, localized storm brewing over a barren landscape. But this storm isn't raining water. It's raining down glowing coals and streaks of fire. It's not a chaotic, raging inferno, but a precise, inevitable consequence falling exactly where it's directed. After the storm of judgment, the poem resolves into a quiet but powerful conclusion. We now see the final destination for those who chose to stand firm in their trust. Verse 7 gives us the ultimate resolution. The one on the throne is inherently righteous and loves righteousness. Therefore, his final gaze is one of approval and care for those who reflect that nature. He isn't just an observer, he's a protector. And our final shot shifts completely. The scene of the fiery storm fades, and all we see is a face. Not angry, but filled with a powerful warmth and light. The gaze isn't distant, it's directed right at you. And in that look, there's no judgment, only a profound sense of approval, peace, and ultimate safety. This is the final destination of faith. So this ancient poem brings us right back to our own lives. When the world seems to be shaking apart and the voices of fear are deafening, the question remains, where do you find your stability? In the midst of the chaos, where is your throne room?